Yeah. So while I was up in, Wyoming, Utah, and all up in that area, this
Hmm.
thing, and I hate to say this idea out loud or whatever, but, you had a lot of that left coast um, influence on people up there and stuff. And
Right,
when
right.
you're talking about cemeteries and things like that, uh, they had what they called like a green burial. Well, so what people would do was rather than be buried in a coffin or anything like that, they would simply just have themselves cremated, and then they would pay to have their remains put in an area of land, and there may be like a little headstone or something like out there, but there wouldn't be no, and it would be in the woods or wherever. And by virtue of people putting their remains there, and that was where they were quote unquote buried, they were conserving land. It was protected. They were using themselves to
Oh,
protect the land.
okay.
Conservation.
Hmm. Interesting. Um, well, I didn't know that. I mean, I know the deal where people like have trees planted over the top of them so they become fertilizer for the trees. And I know if you're gonna take somebody and bury them, literally bury them across state lines, you have to get like permission from both states or whatever. I had a real good friend of my dad's, long story made short. Anyway, his dad died, and he had said that he wanted to be buried in Texas because that was where he's from, out in West Texas. So Scott loaded up the coffin in the back of his pickup truck and called my dad and said, "Hey, we got to take a road trip." And Dad was like, "Have you called the state of Texas to make sure you can do this? What if we get stopped? How are we going to explain this?" And he's like, "Well, no,
Well,
I didn't think of that."
I would have never known there were any rules that you can't haul somebody across state lines. Who knew? I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean, and so I forget what all they had to go through, but there's some little process or approval they had to get, I mean, get stopped or pulled over or whatever. Yeah, it's my dad back there. We're going to bury him in somebody's yard. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, who? Wow. Um, well, so look, we've got a few people starting to come in, and
Yeah.
first Louisiana Watch we've done since last year for sure.
Yeah,
uh,
definitely since last year. We've kind of had or we had the identity crisis going on for a while. And anyway, we kind of have that solved. This is Louisiana Watch, but we're pushing it out to Bossier Watch and Louisiana Watch on Facebook and YouTube, just like we push Bossier Watch out to Louisiana Watch on Facebook and YouTube too. Kind of shared audience.
Yeah, and tonight's going to be a pretty good show. We're supposed to have a guest, maybe two, is going to come on, and some folks that y'all are probably familiar with. You listen to them on the radio quite often, and we're going to talk a little shop about maybe some Republican politics and election integrity, and some Louisiana politicians, and who knows what else. But Louis Avallone and Stephen Parr may come in here with us. Don't know quite yet if Stephen's going to be able to make it, but
You mean we're going to
look
have some
forward.
actual journalists? I mean, like professional radio people in here? What the heck? We're supposed to be amateurs.
Well, I'm interested to know whether he describes. I don't know that Louis actually describes himself as being a journalist. It'll be interesting to have that conversation.
Well, I was looking up. Did you know that Stephen Parr is a two-time Emmy nominee? He's like he's
All
like
right.
interviewed, I don't know, he's like interviewed Sean Hannity and a couple other people. I mean, that's like big time.
Well, I know he has. I know that he has. Been out there in the forefront, and done a lot of big interviews and stuff like that. He's been around the game a while, but I did not know that. Um,
Yeah.
who knew we'd have somebody famous with us?
Yeah, and I didn't know. I mean, maybe we'll ask Lewis about it when he gets on. I did not know Lewis is actually an attorney as well and a pilot.
That's right. That's right. I was able to spend some time with Lewis and his wife up in uh, Minnesota or wherever it was the national convention was. I can't remember now. And really enjoyed, kind of talking with him quite a bit. Down to earth guy. And he's been around the politics thing for quite a while. Has some successful businesses, and he's a sharp cat. Hey, did you see what Clay Higgins did?
No, I have. We've been so focused on the Bossier politics, I have not paid very close attention to state and national stuff.
Well, if you I don't know, for people that, Social Security or get Social Security, or you've had to call the Social Security Administration or whatever, you're going to love what Clay Higgins did. And I got to tell you, it was pretty impressive. And the best way to describe it is so, these committee meetings, they're wonky, they're boring and all this crap. And oh God, I don't know that I could sit through all of them, but he gets to this meeting and he does something, and they've got the administrator of the Social Security Administration in there, right? And he's having to wait his turn to get his shot at asking his questions, but he does something when they start the committee. And just play the video, and y'all watch this for yourself.
All right, here we go.
Mr. Chairman, one of the benefits of having other committee obligations and arriving at oversight committee behind my colleagues is that I get to listen to all the testimony. Mr. Chairman, this is Social Security for 1 hour, 28 minutes, 25 seconds. Phone number 800-772-1213. It's a number for Social Security. This is what our elders have to listen to. These are our elders, my man.
Yes, sir.
The reason they're calling, when I have a question for you, I'll ask it. That's the way this works. The reason our elders call for help is because they need help. Not because they want to listen to elevator music.
Wow.
They want to talk to a human being. The first 5 minutes of this on hold for an hour and a half, Mr. Chairman, was instructions to get to various websites, which our elders have difficulty doing. I have difficulty doing it. Our elders frequently confused and alone, scared. They don't have like laptops and apps and things. They have a telephone. They want to talk to a human being. But wait, they have a local Social Security office they could go to, right? That's a historical model. No. I'll give you Exhibit B. This is from your website, or was, before you ran for DNC and retired in November after negotiating this deal that you think ties the hands of an incoming executive. But we're going to defeat that in Article 3. I'll go and get into that in a minute. But from the website,
Wow.
Listen to this, America. Pay attention to what's happening to our elders. If you need in-person help, you must first make an appointment. You know how you make the appointment? On the telephone. You know who answers the phone? Nobody.
He's right.
This is a greatly efficient Social Security Administration. All of our offices, we struggle and work so hard to care for our elders, and the number one complaint is that they can't get any answers or even anybody on the phone at Social Security.
I'm going to stop it right there. You know, that's very similar to the DMV. You have to make an appointment now.
No doubt about it. But the on hold thing, I mean, that for an hour and 28 minutes, he calls in the start of this committee meeting, and because he knows, and it's still, I wonder how long it would have been the on hold music for somebody to come.
And the guy, the head of the Social Security Administration, was in the audience.
Oh yeah, that's who's being grilled is about the Social Security Administration, and
he should have said, he should have said, well, look, since I'm still on hold, can you actually help me?
I mean, nobody ever
Wow.
picked up.
Wow.
And I don't know. So much of government is like that, and you just can't get people to help. And I appreciate people doing stuff like that. That's creative. That is an example right there for the whole country to see. And there's a lot more places that need things like that done.
Yeah, and look, Dawn Smith Barr says took her 2.5 hours to get through for an appointment 2 weeks ago. Miss Ann Price, she says, and the Office of Personnel Management. And don't forget, so let me get on my soapbox for just a minute. I'm glad you mentioned that, Miss Ann. So, there's this whole TikTok craze, and TikTok's shutting their doors on Sunday, right? They're not even going to let people that already have it downloaded keep using it. They're cutting it off. Now, two things. One, you know who started the whole TikTok ban, right?
Honestly, I don't know because I don't TikTok.
It was Trump. number
Oh,
two, number two, he started it. Now he's for TikTok. But number two, uh, they're so worried about the information and the data and what the Chinese are absorbing through TikTok. Yet the Office of Personnel Management that Miss Ann just mentioned in her comment, do you realize they lost 300 million records about 6 years ago in a security breach? They lost top secret clearance records, including the fingerprints of people. And yet our
oh,
federal
wow.
government is going to sit here and lecture us about the security of TikTok and that the Chinese might know what we're eating and drinking and stupid cat videos, which are all over any other social media app anyway. I mean, this is beyond stupid. All right. Soapbox over.
Well, it's probably more about the fact that they have limited control over it, and I think I even saw a committee hearing where it was talking about that they have the limited control over the data. So at the end of the day, it's all about control.
Yeah, it is. And look, I would rather have the Chinese have control of the data than our federal government. Period. Full stop.
Ooh, I don't know if I can go that far now. Come on.
Hey, we're all using Chinese products. Literally, we're sitting here pushing pixels, and on our soapbox full of pixels right now, we're using Chinese made products to do this.
Doesn't mean we need to go deeper in the hole here. I mean, we need to try to dig out of the hole, not go deeper in it. You sound like some Republicans on election integrity. Oh, let's stick with the machines. We don't need paper. We don't need paper. Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. But so
Yeah.
there's another similar Louisiana tie-in. But did any of y'all, did you see this? Have you heard about this Georgia legislator and him basically being arrested? He's a Georgia senator, and he shows up to the chambers up there, and they refuse, deny him entry, put him to the floor, and arrest him.
Oh, that's cute. No, let me switch screens again and let's go check this out. Hold on just a second. All right, this is the one you want first, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so shall I just hit play or you want to set this up?
Hit play, but the guy with the beard you see there in the suit on the left, he is the senator. He shows up to Colton Moore, I think is his name. He's a big Trump supporter. He was arguably, I think he's an attorney. He was arguably had a lot of influence on, what's her name, Fannie Willis, and getting her disbarred. He was a large part of that effort. And anyway, he goes to go to a meeting in the House, and here's what happens. Show it.
All right, here we go.
Stop, stop. That's it. That's it. That's it. Come on, just going too far. It has gone too far. I have an obligation to be in that room. I represent 200,000 people in Northwest Georgia who duly elected me to be here today. Stop, stop. That's it.
Wow.
That's it. That's it.
Okay.
All right.
So
First of
what
all,
gets
you don't need to wear those slick shoes on that slick floor. That's rule number one.
Well, I don't think he thought he was going to be getting took down today. But what gets somebody to the point to where you're getting blocked from going into the house? Well, it goes to, I think, the day before. And here's where it kind of ties into Louisiana. That second link, there's another video that I put in the notes.
Right.
And if you just go ahead and jump up to about the 231 mark, and this is Colton Moore again, and he's talking about a bill where at a couple of the Georgia colleges, they're wanting to rename some buildings or rename the college after a former legislator, Speaker of the House, that well, let's just say he used the office for personal benefit. Multiple news stories about historically him doing it. And you know how he used that office?
There's no telling.
Legislative continuances.
Oh, really? Somewhere that term sounds familiar. And by the way, one of our guests is in the green room, so we'll be with you here in just a few minutes. But let's play this. I'm interested in this legislative continuances.
But no, there were several more. There was a case of a lady who lost her daughter in her arms as she bled out because a man was driving drunk. Destroyed the woman's family. But she wasn't able to get justice because the man charged with the DUI hired Speaker David Ralston as his attorney.
Oh.
You see, there was a man named Derek Key.
Well, you can just stop right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll speed up on this story here. But the point was, you know, it was the same as the case, you know, with Joe Gregorio and on that deal where, you know, this legislator was using, you know, his ability to have legislative continuances. And especially in this case, that Ralston was the Speaker of the House in Georgia. People would literally, and it was shown by multiple, you know, other news organizations. It was proven that he was using his influence in the office to, you know, delay these people being prosecuted and or other people in other cases getting justice. So he was fighting against, you know, this bill. Well, apparently the current Speaker of the House, I guess, you know, is an older fella and was big buddies with that Ralston. Well, he banned Colton Moore from being able to come into the House.
The plot thickens.
In which, you know, as I understand it, constitutionally, he can't do that, but he did it anyway. Colton Moore said, well, I'm going. He showed up. Well, Trump weighed in on it today, too. And Trump was calling them all out. And so this is a story to watch. And I thought it was interesting because legislative continuances was a hot topic in Louisiana, and it appears it's a hot topic in Georgia, too.
Sounds like it. All right, I'm going to hit the magic button here and see if I can bring on our guest. Let's see, that button and that button. Mr. Avallone, can you hear us?
I can.
And we can hear you. It's always a miracle that this works.
Absolutely. Well, it's a nice, what a nice background here. And unfortunately, Stephen, my co-host, he's in a play.
Okay.
He likes theater as well, and so he had to leave. So he sends his regrets.
Oh, that's all right. I saved him a spot, but that's okay.
Well, you know, Robert Wright, he's a big play guy as well too. I had, you know, some people you just have no idea that they do those kinds of things.
Exactly.
Well, so I wanted you to, you know, come on. First off, we appreciate it. We've been talking about trying to put something together for a long time, and
we have, absolutely.
I said earlier, you know, I enjoyed, me and Kara enjoyed spending a lot of time with you and your bride, you know, up there at the national convention. I think we were able to kind of learn a little bit about each other. And I learned that I had a lot more in common with you and was probably a lot more like you than what I ever thought I was. And, you know, so Republican State Central Committee, you know,
yes,
you and I are both on that. And election integrity, and how did that go?
Well, it was very contentious. There was a lot of folks had differing opinions about how it should go, and it passed in terms of paper ballots by just 2 votes. And if you look at the resolution, I think one of the reasons that there was some confusion over it is that the resolution was for both paper ballots and or an auditable voting system. And of course, the Secretary of State, Landry, is already in favor of some sort of voting machines with a paper trail or some paper or auditable component to it. And I think there were a lot of folks that were in favor of paper ballots that felt like this resolution wasn't strong enough, that it should have just strictly said a paper ballot. And but nevertheless, it was a very close vote, and I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for paper ballots. I know you guys are in favor of paper ballots. I just don't think everyone on the state central committee shares that enthusiasm, at least not yet.
Well, I am a little more aggressive than maybe you would be, or even maybe Rex would be. But I think that people's opposition to paper, there's a lot of people that it's for personal reasons, and two, I'm going to be, I'm not even, this ain't even going to be nice, ignorance of the subject matter. I'm just going to say it like it is. I don't think they've done their homework and studied it. Um, you disagree with me any on that, or are we close?
No, I mean, I think paper ballots are tangible. I think you hold them in your hand, and I do think they can be done efficiently and effectively. I think the criticism of a lot of folks of paper ballots is, well, we're going to be waiting for weeks to count ballots. Now, I served on the election board of commissioners, or the board of election commissioners, uh, in Caddo Parish for a brief time. And I can tell you, counting those ballots, those paper ballots, it was a lot. It took a lot of manpower. Now, granted, we were counting several ballot initiatives, several elections, constitutional amendments, etc. But nevertheless, it is very labor intensive to count all of those ballots. So I certainly understand the concern that we may be waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks, as some folks would be who oppose paper ballots would argue. I mean, Duke, where are you on that? Do you feel like we can get the election results that night?
I 100% I believe we can. And this is the rub that I have. So, and there's a debate raging online amongst, in our kind of private circle of the LAGOP people, but they say, well, if you look at the past elections in 2020, all of the problems were with paper. Well, I would contend you just answered the question about which system is more appropriate, because the paper are the systems that we were able to find the problems. And the machines, the people that prefer the machines, and you hang your hat on the fact that you can't, that there were no problems found. Well, how would you know that there were no problems? You were prevented from being able to see inside the machine. Now, Rex would disagree with us a little bit, because he believes that we should not be fearful of machines, but the tweak that we should have is that it should be open source code and everybody should be able to have access to see into the machines. I can agree with that. But to say that the machines are the way to go because there wasn't any errors in the process, I don't buy that. You have no way. You're by contractually you're limited from being able to get into the machines.
And
Well,
what's interesting? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to interject a little bit that the biggest problem I have with the paper ballots is, like you alluded to, Lewis, that it's very labor intensive, or can be, even if you're able to get them the same night. And when you introduce humans into it, you're also going to introduce errors. There is no way around that. And that's my biggest complaint. I think they can be done securely by paper and probably pretty efficiently. But to think that the paper ballots are going to get rid of all errors is an effort and futility.
Well, I was just going to say the state central committee uses paper ballots. In fact, that was one of the motions when they called for the vote, that they called for a paper ballot vote. And so we all filled out, you know, whether we were in favor of this resolution for paper ballots by filling out paper ballots. And we knew the results, you know, relatively quickly. Now, I know it was just a few hundred folks and not tens of thousands of folks. But again, I do think that the argument that this can be done efficiently, that can be done, you know, on election day where we'll know the results, I think it can be done. And I think lots of folks have shown in other jurisdictions that it can be done. It gives us transparency, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I didn't completely answer your question correctly a while ago when you posed it to me, and you're right. The system that, and I've studied this a lot, I think, like you have, and the system where, you know, the ballots are hand marked. You're identifying that you do actually have a voter when they come in. Their ID. We've got that down pat. They mark it with their hand. We scan it, and at the same time we scan it, we're collecting an image, and it's an image quality that we can get down to the level of validating that the paper is good paper. And at the same time, those images, there is nothing limiting those images from not being uploaded on the internet, to where if mom and pop, you, me, if any of us wanted to count them, we could count them. We could do it. And you also retain the originals and the image 100% auditable. We'll always have it.
Here's the only question, though, and I've posed this before. So if we're going to do paper ballots, why are we introducing a scanner into the mix? You realize what scanners run on, don't you? They run on low-level operating systems, which could be exploited, and again, would have to be open source, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, when I was in that room and, you know, we were, you know, locked in the room, this was during the Caddo Parish Sheriff's race, and we were opening up all of those mail-in ballots, you know, right after we validated each one, we put them into scanners. And by validating them, we were making sure the human part of that validation was making sure that everyone had signed in the correct places. They had checked all the correct boxes, make sure that, you know, if they had been witnessed, if it was witnessed in the correct boxes. And once it passed all of that scrutiny, we then went into another room with these ballots and these huge scanners, several scanners from the Secretary of State's office that were brought up here. You know, we then pushed them all through those scanners, and it was the computer that told us who got how many votes. And, you know, let's not forget the cost factor of all of this, because those voting machines are going to cost a pretty penny. They're very expensive. You're talking about taking a lot of money that could possibly be spent on, I don't know, you know, infrastructure, cutting taxes, reducing the size of government. So I think those are all very important considerations, you know, because as the Secretary of State, Nancy Landry, has indicated, you know, she hasn't even issued an RFP for those voting machines. And assuming that she does so soon, the first elections won't be until 2026 before those new machines would be in operation.
Yeah, and again, I'm not completely opposed to it, and Duke and I have had this, you know, we've tossed this back and forth. It's just, and I do think that the advantage to the paper is, again, leaves a verifiable, visible audit trail. And look, the truth is, I'm not opposed to, honestly, doing away with the secret ballot. That's the only way that you can truly make sure that every vote is counted, is to do away with the secret ballot, and you get a slip after you vote, and your slip better match to this slip. And there's no way around that, but, you know, that raises a whole other can of worms.
And, you know, and I think the other, you know, we talk about this resolution on paper ballots. I think there were a lot of people on the state central committee that might have voted for paper ballots or for this resolution endorsing paper ballots had it not been for the multiple emails and texts that folks received. I wasn't offended by that, but there are some folks on the state central committee that were taken aback, and they said, "You know what? Some of the emails seemed threatening to them." And they said, you had me up until that point. After that, I don't want to have anything to do with you. So I don't know if the tactics had an influence on the vote, but it seemingly did.
I never saw all of those emails. I saw one after the fact. For whatever reason, I guess I was excluded from them because they knew that I'm a paper ballot guy. But I never saw all of those, and I could see why someone would be irritated about getting a lot of emails regarding this. But I mean, wait a minute, uh, who made the decision to step up and serve?
Right. I mean, we're elected officials. And to the extent your constituents want to let you know, hey, this is how we think you ought to vote. I mean, that's part and parcel with representative democracy.
Yeah, and I think that is what irritates me the most about this issue because I think any reasonable person that evaluated all of the elections and the processes regarding paper and the machines and in a lot of the places where you had the problems with the paper, you had changes to the process last minute and inconsistent changes at that. And that was what caused a lot of the problems. And, so the people who are just adamantly against paper, they're so quickly to dismiss trying to go to a paper system and citing all of those problems without acknowledging all of the changes, COVID and the
Hmm.
like. And that
Right.
irritates me.
So,
Absolutely.
so for the folks watching, maybe Lewis, give me your take on or explain briefly what the role of the state central committee is. What authority does the state central committee have? What influence does it have on the legislature?
Sure. So the state central committee is made up of representatives from every Senate district in the state. And a lot of folks don't even remember voting sometimes for state central committee members. They'll say, "Oh, you're elected to this body," and then, or you might ask for their vote, and they go, "I never remember voting on that." But it is something that, if you're a registered Republican, it will be on your ballot alongside other major races, and we are elected to represent constituents within our senatorial district at the state level, at the state Republican Party level. So you have a local Republican Party that is referred to as the Parish Executive Committee, and there's a Parish Executive Committee, or statute creates a Parish Executive Committee in every one of our 64 parishes. And you have a Republican Parish Executive Committee, Democrat Executive Committee, and that serves as the local Republican or Democratic Party organization. So the state party has a similar organization, and that's what's referred to as the state central committee. Now, in terms of influence, it has a great deal of influence, I believe, insofar as a body. It is a These folks are duly elected to represent Republicans all across the state, and so if you're a Republican candidate, like Dr. John Fleming, you will show up, or Jeff Landry, or Liz Murrill, or whomever. If you're running for statewide office, you will show up at the state central committee meeting. Most times it's in Baton Rouge, but it has been held in Shreveport before, and Alexandria, Lafayette. But you're going to show up there because that is the body that represents the Republican Party throughout the state.
Thank you. Perfect explanation.
Well, Lewis,
You're
we won't
welcome.
keep you. You guys are slaving in the radio business over there and doing a mighty fine job, I might add. I
Well,
love
thank
to
you.
listen to y'all on the way home. Y'all hit a home run,
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate what y'all do.
Y'all do a great job, and both of you have unique talents and experience that really bring the message home. And we've got to continue to evangelize the message of conservatism. There's so many folks that say, you're preaching to the audience, or you're preaching to the choir, rather. Well, sometimes the choir needs preaching too, and you all do a great job of that. So thank you, and thank you for the invitation. Certainly enjoyed being with you both.
Oh, thank you, Lewis. See you next time.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Well, I think that went relatively well. They did a great job of explaining the role of the Central Committee and how that works.
Yeah, Lewis is on top of it. Lewis was the chairman of the CAT-OPEC for a long, long time. He's been involved in the state party for a long time as well. Have worked with him a lot of years on all of that, and he knows it inside and out. He was a delegate to the last national convention. I think he was one of the electors of maybe the previous 4 years before that. I can't remember, but he'd been around the block quite a bit.
Yeah. All right. So what else are we going to talk about? Was there anything else that went on at the State Central Committee meeting that was of any relevance?
Well, there was, but it may be a little premature to kind of get into it. I think there's a lot of stuff going on regarding the future Senate race against Bill Cassidy.
Ah, yes.
And I say against Bill Cassidy because I think probably by the time the race gets here, Bill Cassidy won't be a Republican. But I don't know. We'll see.
Well,
John Fleming.
some would argue he's not really a Republican anyway, so you may as well change the little letter.
Well, we're going to have closed primaries, so the only people that'll get to vote in that race are Republicans. And John Fleming is announced, and he's in it. And I understand there are going to be some other Republicans that may announce or are considering announcing that they're going to be strong contenders, I think. And there's going to be some good people in the mix.
Yeah,
We'll see.
it should be an interesting race. I was going back. I read one of the Trump quotes about Cassidy, and it said, he said, "But this is not someone you want to be in a foxhole with. Very disloyal and not very smart." Bill Cassidy is now shunned in his own state as a disloyal lightweight, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. Thank you, Louisiana.
That was the other thing I meant to ask Lewis about, because Cassidy did show up at the Republican State Central Committee, and I wanted to try to find out if anybody visited with him. Did they even talk to him? Did they shun him? How did it go? Because I'll bet it was pretty cold. Had I been down there, I wouldn't have spoke to him because I wouldn't have wanted anybody to see me speaking to him.
Well, let me ask you this. So, I used to follow national politics mostly, barely paid attention to local and state stuff. Now that's completely flipped in the last, 4.5 years of Bossier Watch and all that. But the biggest issue, or is the biggest issue with Cassidy, that he flipped on the whole Trump impeachment deal? Or are there other things that people need to be aware of? Can you think of any other things off the top of your head? And I know we don't really have that in the notes,
Well,
but
it was primarily that. I mean, and then FISA and the money, and he was just moderate on a lot of stuff, more moderate than anybody expected. But I think someone could make the argument that if you look at a lot of the our other members of our delegation, that they've had some comparable bad votes as well too.
right.
And we've been critical of Mike Johnson. I mean, what was it? Transgender studies for Pakistan? Remember
Yeah.
that bill?
Yeah, I think people have forgotten about all that. But yeah, before he became Speaker of the House, he's had some definite not so great votes.
Yeah, but that thing, on Cassidy in the January 6th stuff and on the election integrity stuff, and Cassidy went too far. Nobody else went that far. Cassidy went too far, and I think he's irredeemable, from that standpoint.
Yeah, and Kara reminds us, hello, Kara. Good to see you back in the comments. Yeah, she reminds us of the pandemic stuff. I think he was a big vaccine supporter, and again, not that I'm anti-vax completely, but Cassidy was really pushing on the vaccine issues, if I remember correctly, and some of the other things involved with the shutdown and all that. So,
Yeah, and he is, as I understand it, bucking against RFK.
right,
Which you love him or like him. I think I don't know. I think it's a mixed bag with RFK. I think the drug industry and all of that is way overdue for a haircut, and having somebody buck them and question them. But that's all of our government. Well, I mean, we
right.
need all of our government to be questioned, and they haven't been in such a long time. I mean, look at Bossier City. It's just, you know, we have to get 3 judges. We can say all day long that, we believe that there's malfeasance, but, you know, you got to have 3 judges to say it.
Right. And they said it and said it very strongly and very well and put it in writing, as a matter of fact. And of course, if most of y'all have probably followed Bossier Watch too, but if not, make sure and go over to Bossier Watch and go to the Bossier Term Limits Facebook page. We posted that ruling and also posted the excellent interview that Wes Marriott did this morning on Keel. So shout out to Keel for Mike and Aaron for doing a great job this morning and covering that. And pay attention to what's going on. Look, this is Louisiana Watch, so we don't want to spend much time on Bossier stuff necessarily. But this whole term limits issue has regional and statewide implications. I don't know if everybody realizes that.
That's right.
I mean, we're setting some precedents here for generations to come, so it's a very interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And there is an argument or a debate that many of you are going to face, and the decision you're going to have to make coming down the road across the whole state of Louisiana, and it revolves around term limits. And we'll save that for another day. But you're either for term limits or you're not.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways.
One or the other. All right, Mr. Lowry, this is doing
that's
a
all
short.
I've got.
This is doing a short show, but usually Louisiana Watch is not near as long and protracted as Bossier Watch is. So we appreciate everybody that did show up and watch tonight, as we're, like I said, kind of dusting off the cobwebs of the Louisiana Watch graphics. So we're gonna maybe try to do one of these, maybe one a week if we can squeeze in the time. Maybe a couple a month or something like that. But we're gonna try to be putting out more and more content if we can.
Yep. Thanks everybody for watching, and y'all have a good weekend.
We're out of here.